Georgetown.
So, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third and final instalment in the Why I'm Not Voting trilogy. It's become a trilogy more by necessity than design. I didn't mean to do this, but I just keep wanting to talk about this stuff. To round things off today, I want to talk positively about some of the alternatives to our current political system. Partly because I don't want you to just think I'm moaning, and I think if you're going to do something down, you should also be willing to discuss a positive alternative. But mostly because the only reason I've really felt the need to make these videos at all, discussing my little opinion on this matter, is that it seems like some people think that it's like morally wrong not to vote, like you're a jerk if you don't vote, and I just don't think that's the case. I think people who think that are labouring under the misapprehension that this is the only system that we will ever have, that we could ever have, that this is the best we could do, that this is somehow perfect, and if you don't engage with this system, you don't engage with life. I just think that's such a mistake, a fallacy. So in my usual spirit of open-mindedness, I'd like to discuss a bunch of the ideas that I've either had myself or heard about over the years for alternative systems that we could not necessarily take on but think about. I'm not suggesting any of these will happen or that they even could happen. I'm not even suggesting that they're better than our current system. I just want us to think about them. Because the truth is, and this will sound a bit weird after hearing me for 2 videos talking about how rubbish this system is, I actually think it's reasonably good. I think it's one of the best systems that there is in the world at the moment, or that there has ever been. I just think that it would be a mistake to stop here, to think this is, you know, draw a line and we can't ever talk about any possible future improvements to the way that we do things in politics. I think that would be a grave error. So, in the hope of keeping this video reasonably brief, I've limited myself to 5 options and written them down here. I'm going to talk to you about 5 ideas. There are a bunch more, but I'm just going to limit myself to this 5. Number 1. Benevolent Dictator. I think it'd be kind of interesting to think about the idea of only ever having one election where we elect the one person to be our emperor that we think would be really brilliant. Okay, so we choose the kindest, most intelligent person we possibly can and elect them to be the ultimate leader of everything. Okay, and all the politicians that we have at the moment could stay where they are and be like advisors and argue about issues and even draft legislation, but this emperor would have the final say, okay, and would be the ultimate ruler of everything. Now, obviously there's problems with this, and it's a lot like various systems that have happened in the past. The key word in this benevolent dictator idea is benevolent, right? Because you couldn't elect someone and then have them turn around and just kill everyone, or just promote the interests of their friends over everyone else. That wouldn't work. You have to have someone who is genuinely interested in the public good, okay? And finding that person is probably impossible. Getting everyone to agree on who that person would be is probably impossible, but it's an interesting thought, and I think it would be weird to dismiss it and to refuse to talk about it. Part 2, idea 2, proper communism, I've written down here. In theory, proper communism is a brilliant idea. It doesn't work in practice. It's been tried in Russia and Cuba and China and various other places around the world. It doesn't really work because people are too lazy and greedy and self-obsessed to make it work properly. But the idea of everyone working really, really hard and giving almost all their money to the government to redistribute according to need is a really cool idea. Again, I'm not suggesting it would be better than the system that we've got right now. I think it probably wouldn't, but it would be very strange to ignore it as a possibility, or to stop thinking about it because we've got this system right now that doesn't do that. It's just, I think it would be interesting. Ancient Greek mandatory political service is what I've written down. In ancient Greece, what they would do in their democracy, the original democracy, they would call up, like jury service, random members of the public, and they would be forced to sit on a kind of council, and those random members of the public would have to spend, I think, a year or something debating issues and coming up with decisions on things. I just think that would be so cool. I don't think it would necessarily work in the modern day. I think people would break off into factions and fight each other and nothing would get done. It would be incredibly inefficient, but it's just an interesting idea and no one talks about it. Non-political executive council is number 4. I've had this idea, this is one of my own. I think we should have a completely non-political executive council made up of just members of the public who are interested and leading experts on issues, and this council would sit somewhere and debate issues. They would have impartial debates. They would not take a side, but they would discuss issues from all sides, okay? This would be broadcast on like a YouTube channel, just live all the time, and you'd be able to go back and watch things again, all of these debates, and then the public would vote on every single policy issue. So you would do like an online vote. And I think it would be cool if you either had to have watched all the videos about something before you were allowed to cast your vote, or if you had to take a little test to show that you understood the issue properly before you could cast your vote. But that way, you could get rid of all this kind of rhetoric where everyone just argues with each other, this adversarial politics thing, and you could just have people impartially debating issues, informing the public, and then asking for their opinion. I think that would be so cool, and you could do that always. You'd never need to have an election. Again, the current political establishment could kind of stay where they are and be part of this, have consultation roles and talk to people and discuss. That would be fine, but it would be really cool if we could just watch the videos, debate, and then send in our questions, and we could vote, and we could do it all online. That would be really fun. Finally, and this is the thing that I actually think we should do, this is my most recent idea, and I think it's brilliant. I think we should vote for policy, not people. Okay, so when we go to vote at the moment, we put a cross in a box to vote for the candidate, the person in our local area that we want to represent us in Parliament. And the various political parties count up how many MPs they've got, and someone forms a government and the Prime Minister becomes the head of that government, and it's really convoluted, and your vote is really far removed from the ultimate decision-making process, and it's just really hard to predict what your vote will ultimately mean by the time it gets filtered through this complicated system. What I think we should do instead is, when you go along to the polling station, you should sit like an exam. You should have an exam paper, and you should, there's no wrong answers though, okay? So they ask you a bunch of questions like, do you think we should privatise the NHS, yes or no, right? And you sit down, you think about it, and you put a tick in a box. Okay, there would be, again, a non-political council which would carry out these ultimate requests from the public. It would just be a bunch of civil servants sitting and saying, okay, the public says 60% yes to privatise the NHS. Right, they wouldn't, but then they have to go and do that. That would be so cool. So first of all, I think it would force people to engage with issues and learn about political issues and policy things that and understand how they feel a lot more than our current system does. And secondly, I think it would give the people a more direct voice. Rather than electing someone they think might represent them and then they go away and think about them and there's this whole clandestine element to it, I think it would be really cool if they just ask us questions, we answer them, and then they do it. How fun would that be? I think it would ruin turnout. I think a lot of people wouldn't bother going along to vote if it meant sitting down and filling out a form for an hour, but I think that's probably a good thing. If it makes people engage in a more serious way and think more carefully and more logically and more critically about these policy issues, I think that would be an excellent thing. And it would also cure this problem of feeling that no one party represents your views completely. Because if you quite like one set of policies, but there's one thing that's like a red line issue for you, you can't vote for that party. It feels wrong. And so if you could go along, represent your views in this form, that would be so great. I just think that would be really cool. Anyhow, look, none of these ideas is perfect. None of them is even that good, okay? I understand that. But the point of making these videos, for me, has been to try and awaken in some of you an awareness that there are alternatives, there is something beyond the current political system, and not voting is not the same as not caring. I think we all need to engage with politics all year round, not just when there's an election once every 5 years. I think we should all be engaging all the time. And that's why I don't vote, because I feel like it's such a negligible blip in the political landscape. I think the real interest is in what happens between elections, what we do every day. And I think that's something that's come out in a lot of the discussion during this election. So I hope that that's a good thing. I hope that people moving forward will think that way more and feel slightly less apocalyptic about the general election that happens once every now and again, because it's really only a small part of what matters. Thank you so much for listening. I will call it quits there and talk about something else in my next video. Hope the election goes well for you. I'm sure it'll be interesting no matter what. Let's look forward to all the hung parliament stuff. It's going to be an absolute disaster, isn't it? Oh, wonderful. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.